my mind has really been blown by all the different directions that it can take and the different permutations it can take. And I think this panel is just the perfect encapsulation of that fact. So we've got a fantastic lineup, and I like the composition here because we've got two companies that are making it happen. But also when we talk about this happening in Detroit, it's also about the ecosystem in which it happens. And hence, that's our third panelist. We've got the ecosystem represented here as well. And so before we get to this, I've got a whole list of questions here to talk about. But I wanted to give each of our panelists a few seconds here to just, one, identify yourself, but two, talk about what your role is here in this new mobility, new Detroit region ecosystem. So Joe, why don't we kick it off with you?
All right. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josef Hjelmaker, and everything to get the attention, right? Recovering from an ACL surgery, but super happy to be here today. I have a long experience working in the big corporate space, 17 years in the automotive space, working for Aptiv or Delphi Electronics and Safety. Did consumer electronics and appliances at Whirlpool Corporation over on the west coast of Michigan. And then I did 2 years as the Chief Innovation Officer at Thor Industries, the maker of Airstream, Jayco, Keystone, and other things. And now I have the privilege of running my own business, Electric Outdoors, who are focusing on connecting people with sustainable outdoor experiences. And so I work as an innovator, an entrepreneur, a community builder here in Michigan, supporting new mobility initiatives.
Yeah, thanks. And Josef, I actually got to see your product at Lawrence Tech just on Monday. So very fortuitous timing that we're here. Okay, Roshni, talk about being part of the ecosystem in which all of this gets to happen.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Roshni Shokar. I'm on the Michigan Central team. Michigan Central, for those of you who do not know, is creating a place around us. We're sitting in Michigan Central right now that brings together all the components needed to push forward solutions and skills at the intersection of mobility and society. And so Newlab is our partner in building that startup ecosystem here. And so that's the space that we're sitting in right now. My role at Michigan Central is on the innovation team, so helping provide the different components needed to help further that innovation. So that could be funding, that could be infrastructure, policy, all of those things that are required in this constantly changing and difficult time in mobility, an exciting time.
Thank you. And Sam?
Hey, everyone. My name's Sam Shapiro. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Grounded Electric RVs. We are a member company here in the building, so very grateful for everything Michigan Central and Newlab is doing here. We're building electric RVs. We are starting with electric camper vans. You can see one back there. It's a 250-mile range electric camper van that we just launched called the G2. We're shipping them to customers now, so we're delivering products, and we have an electric towable trailer plans for next year.
Fabulous. All right, so I've got a list of questions here, but hopefully we never need all of these questions because I'd love to see as much interaction and dialogue between our panelists as possible. But let's start big. First of all, Detroit became a global epicenter of mobility before there was such a thing as, thinking broader about mobility. Can you talk about what it is about this region that makes it such a good place for you to do what it is you're doing in new mobility? And Josef, why don't we start with you and kind of make our way down the line?
Yeah, no, sure, absolutely. And I mean, what better place to do mobility, building on 100 years plus of legacy and moving people around. And obviously mobility is so much broader than just cars in general. But, what I feel innovating here out of Detroit versus maybe innovating out of the valley or something like that is that here in Detroit, we have an attachment to the resources that are beyond, that are around us altogether. We have a very grounded, to mention Sam's company again, a way of approaching, the development of products, walking in the customer's shoes. And we are practitioners. We know how to get things all, done all together. And I listened to one of the panels here earlier as well, talking about co-creation and collaboration. I think surviving 100+ years in the automotive space obviously fosters a lot of competition, a lot of drive, a lot of the significant things that we think about when we think about the automotive industry altogether. But what I think these new ways of doing things, and Newlab and Michigan Central is a fantastic example of that, is the co-creation, the collaboration that we're starting to see in the space, and realizing that to solve big things like mobility, you would be a fool if you think you are an expert or can solve these things on your own, right? It requires to have the partnerships, the infrastructure, the relationships to move things forward.
Yeah, Roshni?
Yeah, and I mean, to build on that, I think because we've been the home of the auto industry, we have a lot of the foundation that's in place for these future industries. For example, the talent pool that's here. Detroit has the second largest concentration of of engineers in the country, and those engineers don't only need to build cars; they can build eVTOLs, they can build all of the future forms of mobility that we think we're going to see. We have all of the OEMs here. We have a lot of other of the pieces that are kind of needed to push forward the future spaces in mobility. And now we have an ecosystem and a place that's kind of bringing everyone together. And so that's really the way we see it.
And finally, Sam.
Yeah, I think so. We actually were going to start the company in Texas originally, and then we kind of like got recruited a little bit to come here instead.
Woo-hoo.
And yeah, I would say it's definitely a great decision, and we're super glad that we're here in Detroit instead of somewhere on the West Coast or in Texas. Yeah, definitely agree with you about the talent pool here of engineers. I think the software engineering is probably the slightly weaker part for Detroit, but compared to somewhere like the Valley. But I think that's changing, as more people come here. And I think that all of the physical manufacturing expertise here is something that's like probably harder to replicate on the West Coast than it is to bring software engineers here realistically. So I think personally, I think the future is pretty bright for Detroit, in the mobility startup ecosystem.
No. So let's flip that around also, because the history and the asset base that we have makes us a wonderful host. But also, does that come with any baggage? And what I mean is, do you ever run into, well, that won't work, that's not how we do things around here? Kind of a more entrenched mindset that's used to, that's not how we do things. And Josef, has that been something you've run into at all?
I mean, I think you need to, listen to the people around you and assessing whether or not they are in support of your vision altogether. I think that's always been one of my, key success criteria, if you will, that if you try to push your head into the wall too much, I mean, ultimately you're going to fail as well. I think what we see in Detroit, is the opportunity to find people that rally behind you and that are using the legacy. Legacy sometimes is bad. It's a bad word that we don't want to talk about. It drags along a big, backpack of bad things in your luggage, right? But if you're using that, if you're capitalizing on that, and I think one of the things that Detroit have done to survive, going back to the survival instinct, is to be pretty flexible in terms of, approaching new things, supporting new things, driving new things. There are many things that Detroit probably have been stuck in the same wheel tracks, if you will, from many of the things. I mean, it's a reason why the combustion engine has been surviving for 100+ years, right? We capitalized billions of dollars into, this particular technology, and companies want to earn, they want to drive the profitability from their investment. So of course, there's always some resistance from that point of view. But I think the flexibility and the activities that we're seeing right now supporting mobility, especially in these new places, right, that are not bound to some of the other legacies, and other organizations that are bridging the startup world with the big corporations, certainly helps make sure that the POCs or the proof of concepts that we are developing are landing in the right space and therefore breaking down barriers.
Right.
I think like you're saying, like legacy industries are very difficult across the board, across industries to get to shift. But because we're creating such a big momentum here with so many different transformative technologies and projects and things like that, like people will quickly realize that they have to join along and be a part of it. Otherwise, they're going to miss out on something.
Yeah, I think like for me, operating the company I do in manufacturing and like building physical products, what's like very clear is that automotive comes with this, this idea of like mass manufacturing and every I mean, it's almost like the antithetical ethos to startup, the whole move fast, break things, Silicon Valley, Facebook mentality. And then on the complete opposite side, you have automotive that's all about like redundancy and safety. And you know I think those things do butt heads, and that's something that even I think, yeah, maybe like talking to engineers here in Detroit, it's like just a bit of a different ethos or mentality. So but I don't think it's like insurmountable. At the end of the day, I think like a talented engineer can, that's like a mindset thing. It's not necessarily like a technical ability difference. A good engineer can engineer, can spend a bunch of time like engineering a system to 99 like Six Sigma safety rating, or they can, do something much faster and scrappier. And I think that's just kind of the tension that you're maybe referring to a little bit.
Yeah, and Sam, just to follow up, because you mentioned kind of, worlds colliding, the little butting of heads, but I wonder, is there an upside to that? Does maybe some of this legacy thinking, does it result in a more durable, kind of more real world applicable product just because of the practical experience in bringing these products forth that's here in this region?
I mean, I think that's kind of like the $1 million question in the automotive industry right now. When you look at Tesla and Rivian, and I mean, I think Ford is undergoing like pretty monumental changes right now, and they're obviously shifting their whole philosophy and want to be a software company now. But they're facing a lot of challenges from Tesla and from Chinese companies. So I think this is like a really, really interesting moment in time, for the automotive industry from that perspective, as the OEMs like look to bring a lot more of these software systems in-house compared to the past, where it used to be like 500 different vendors for each tiny little subsystem and stuff like that. So I don't know that we really know like how this plays out yet, honestly.
And Josef, it looked like you wanted to chime in just now.
Yeah, no, I mean, as Sam was speaking, right, and the butt heading between different organizations and activities and conflicting KPIs, if we will, have had a certain byproduct too that I think is a positive thing for Detroit. And that is all these small integration workshops and lean manufacturing shops that we have out there that somehow have been able, they've had to pick up some of those conflicts that these big legacy things have created. And in there, you find people that have been solving problems in a much leaner way, and therefore also have the hands-on experience to bring things together. I think that's especially important when you're building hard tech companies like Sam and I are doing to some extent. But there is a huge IoT, huge software play to support the overall experience. So I was just thinking about that as Sam was speaking.
Yeah, no, and I think it's worth mentioning that, the automakers and suppliers that we have here, they want to evolve and do things more like the tech world, the Texases, the Austins, and the Silicon Valleys of the world. And so I think there's not just an openness, but also a hunger for that change to take place. And I'm very, very happy that the automotive world is choosing to evolve in Michigan, as opposed to, well, heck, let's just open a center in California or a center in Austin or a center somewhere that, we get to benefit as a region from this transformation happening.
Well, if I can add, I think there's another component to it as well, and that's the fact that many Michiganders, many Detroit people are using the products in maybe a slightly different way. From a mobility aspect point of view, we do a lot of outdoorsy things, and we have a lot of products, right? Not only cars, but we have bikes and scooters and snowmobiles and whatever it is, right? And we have agriculture around us. We have so many industries that are in need of solving the mobility challenge. And again, going back to walking in the customer's shoes and actually solving for real problems, I think Detroit and Michigan somehow is uniquely positioned for that in some way.
No, and once again, perfect segue, because when we talk about mobility in the broader sense, there's also the fact that things are electrifying as well. And that opens up an even broader definition of mobility, and it becomes kind of a nice virtuous cycle. And both of the products made by the companies here on stage just happen to use electricity and not internal combustion engines. And so I'm wondering, can we talk about that a little bit of how do these changes let us basically expand access to these products and basically to a better lifestyle for consumers as a result of mobility being what it is today and not what it was only, let's say 10 years ago. And I don't know if between Josef and Sam, if one of you wants to take the lead on this first.
It's a broad question. Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll talk to maybe just like a unique angle is for like the RV experience. When you compare an electric RV to a gas powered RV, I think the big difference, aside from all of the obvious EV differences, are that when you have a giant battery, you can do a lot more in the interior living space than you could with a gas powered RV that has like a tiny little car battery. So you can basically power for the first time, like a much more powerful HVAC system for like a long period of time when you're boondocking in the desert or whatever it is. Because now instead of a 2 kilowatt hour battery that you might have in a normal gas powered RV, we have a 173 kilowatt hour battery. So it's literally 100 times more, battery capacity that you have. And then I think, obviously there's like a million ways that EVs are a better user experience. The one way that they're not is around, the range and the charging still. And the infrastructure is obviously a huge problem. Probably like the biggest barrier to continued adoption of EVs. And so I know some of the stuff you guys are doing addresses that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what we say, we are developing a portable off-grid and solar power destination system that basically unlocks land for landowners and allow us to travel in Sam's vehicles to the great outdoors, right? We give access to electricity, to water, to waste handling where, you can't, because it takes forever to expand grid. It costs tens of millions of dollars to do that. And as you're doing that, as you're expanding the grid, and the grid is very poor in US, by the way, that's a whole different subject to talk about as well. But as you're doing that, you're harming nature as well. So we're definitely trying to be, what the Tesla supercharger is to the passenger EV world right now. We try to be that to the electrical outdoor experience. But we're trying to look at it also from an overall system point of view. As these products are getting electrified, right, we want to make sure that we are meeting the real consumer demands. And so we're listening carefully to what mobility really means and what, and for the individual. And of course, being a little bit older, we really try to listen to the younger generation in terms of what they want and how they want to experience things. And they don't want to wait, 18 months to go to a beautiful location, or they don't want to, spend a fortune maybe buying certain products and stuff like that, right? We know that usership, we know that the younger generation altogether wants more mobility. They want more sustainable, accommodations and more experience in general. I think we all need and want to some extent. So what we try to do, is to include that in our thoughts, right? And making sure that we can support how mobility in the cities, in the rural areas, in the vast outdoors, right, are being met by the right experiences, driving the right consumer needs.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's interesting because you mentioned the market, right? And the market isn't just replacements, right? I think there are a lot of people who would be interested in a given product that's electrified who would not want the internal combustion engine version of it. And I would put myself in that category because, for example, I'd never gone snowmobiling until 2 years ago. And I was shocked that I'm in this beautiful natural environment and this God-blessed engine on this thing. It's revving like crazy and I'm inhaling all this smoke, and it was really negatively impacting my enjoyment, right? So I would buy a snowmobile or an ATV or a similar vehicle, but I have no interest in it unless it's electric. So there is an expansion of the market that's possible as a result.
Yeah, I think the majority, at least the last I heard of Rivian truck owners, had never owned a gas-powered pickup truck before. So these are all net new pickup truck owners, entering the market.
Yeah, no, I do love that. You know, we're not just transitioning the market from one source of power to another. We're creating a whole new market as we go. Yeah, Roshni.
Yeah, no, I think another part of that is as we're re-envisioning products, you can also re-envision the service model and the business model. And so, like what Sam's doing with RVs and allowing them to be available in almost like an Airbnb type model, it reduces the barrier for someone who maybe has never rented an RV before to be able to try it. And I know you're also trying to make experiences more accessible. And so we're creating new ways for people to experience these things, whereas traditionally you maybe only did it if like your friends or your family or you had a different on-road to it.
No, absolutely. And I think it's also nice to see the definition of mobility expanded to things that don't move. You know, for example, you know, supplying the power that is the enabler. And then, you know, it's also serving you when you're stationary, not just in getting there. It's actually enhancing the experience of being there as well. All right. So, what I did want to ask about as well is we talked about the tremendous enabling assets and capabilities of this region, but I'm curious also about what's missing. You know, what would you like to see that would help this ecosystem be even better for the purposes of hosting and birthing and kind of enabling the companies that are making this new mobility happen? Um, do we have a volunteer to go first?
I mean, I kind of already said it before. I think we need to bring more software talent to Michigan. That would be the big one. I think when people are building startups, there's still like this perception that you know, you go to the Bay Area and that's where all the really great software engineers are. And you know, obviously there are great software engineers at the OEMs here in Detroit, but you know, but I think like as like a percentage or like a density, it's something that can be improved. And then the other thing which I also mentioned is like that mindset shift. I think like to be honest, like how do we get engineers out of the OEMs and into more startups in the ecosystem here? Because we just need people who are excited about innovation and taking risk, and again, like it's just like a different mentality when, you know, these 50,000 person companies that have, you know, they're trying to change, but can kind of only change so quickly. So
Yep. No, very interesting. Curious about the path through which we could supply some of that software engineering demand that's there. Would you see it as more, do we need more graduates coming from the engineering schools, or do we need companies that are specifically aimed at providing this as a service to entrepreneurs like you?
yeah, I think well, I thought you were going to say just more companies in general, like more startups. Like I think it's a flywheel, like a positive feedback loop, like chicken or pick your metaphor, but we need more startups, we need more engineers, and they'll breed each other and continue to feed off each other.
And I think a part of it is also the like connecting the two and making sure there's easy ways to connect. So Michigan Central has we're launching a software development program, and we're also doing some training programs with Google Code Next to train like the next generation of software engineers. But then it's also about like making sure all of those people are seeing what's happening here and making sure the people who are working at the OEMs are seeing that there is a lot of like opportunity, and it might be a different, you know, risk reward cycle, but like they see that they can come here and kind of have a different career path here.
Yeah.
And just to build on what Regina and Sam said, right? I mean, I think the interest in having the right talent to support your activities is so important. And we've been fortunate. We're so privileged to have people, you know, supporting us through partnerships, accelerators and stuff. But we are sort of software product business people. We felt we had that equation under control, but we didn't have the hard tech equation under control, right? So we were happy to find that hard tech gene here and the desire to keep on that manufacturing DNA, right, and build stuff. But I do agree with you, Sam, right? I mean, the fact that where are those software incubators or accelerators or factories that pump out people with excitement and passion and the environment supporting the risk taking, you know, to some extent? Because yeah, we were brave, we jumped, right, you know, but not everyone is fortunate to do that. So there could definitely be some support around that.
Yeah, I think that's a very eloquent way to put it, like the environment around risk taking, and I think that's a good summary of everything I've been trying to say. And another aspect of that too is the investment community here too, and that's something that if you have an opportunity to have authentic conversations with entrepreneurs in the Detroit or Michigan mobility ecosystem, I think most would agree that that's another thing that probably could use some improvement here in Michigan.
Yeah, and Roshni, is that something that's part of the mechanism, the whole machine behind Michigan Central?
It is. So right now, we have about 22 VCs who are located in the building. So right now, we've been mainly doing that through like bringing those pieces together and making sure we're facilitating connections between founders and VCs. We've also, in the interim, launched a few like funding programs that provide grants to startups. Because one of the biggest challenges with hardware tech is that a lot of investors are hesitant to get behind it because it takes so much money to build the first prototype and to start to get customers. And so we're trying to like fill that gap by providing funding to at least build a prototype or get a pilot off the ground, while companies are taking the time to then sign customers and get investment.
Yeah, no, that's one thing that really makes me excited. It's like if you think things are hot now and if you think it's really cool and there's so much neat stuff happening, just wait until all of this is fully deployed and we're going to be in a whole other gear here pretty quick. All right, so we have time now for questions from the audience before we wrap up. There's a gentleman with a microphone right over there. So do we have anyone with a, right here up front, we got a question.
In the startups in here? So right now we have about $7.5 million worth of programs that have gone towards startups in different ways. That could be like infrastructure to enable startups. That could be grants, and a lot of that is still kind of being put out. But we're working on now, trying to find additional resources to bring in more investment. And then, sorry, that's from Michigan Central. But in terms of like venture capital funding, there's been over $500 million of investment from the outside community into the startups that are here.
Cool. Got a question right, that gentleman in the blue shirt.
I wanted to ask a different kind of question. I'm interested in pedestrians, and I'm interested in cyclists or small personal mobility devices. And I'm wondering what the research or if there's any work being done at Michigan Central to encourage people to walk, either in the development of better shoes or whatever you think innovation would be to bring more people to walk to the grocery store, or like low tech.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate what this group is and high tech, but a lot of low tech is very accessible to all ages, including children walking to school.
Yes.
So how do we get, because I see a lot of people driving kids like very little distances these days. And anyway, just wondering what the research, because we've got a vice president of mobility research and innovation. People are just like, what's the research on encouraging walking?
Yeah, I think one of the most critical enablers for that is going to be the street and the different streets and being able to connect places. And so we have a public-private partnership with the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit, and we're working very closely with them to identify ways to make the streets, more walkable, feel more approachable, to kind of help enable that. And we also have a few different challenges that have been launched around trying to understand like what would help Detroiters be able to walk more. And a few of the critical areas we've noticed are like pedestrian lighting in certain areas, and not feeling safe crossing large streets. And so I think now we're kind of pulling together the different companies and startups that could be enabling solutions for those.
Yeah, and I'll just tack one thought onto that because, I see it everywhere. Little things like having a given city better coordinate timing of traffic lights. There are wide streets where you can barely make it across the street in the time that little light is blinking go, right? And so that does scare people off in terms of if I know I have to cross a major road, I'm more likely to drive than to walk. And so I am hearing from mayors locally that's just one little thing that's making a big difference is just something as simple as timing of those traffic lights.
We actually have a really interesting example of that. One of the first pilots we did here was with a company called KiwiBot that is a sidewalk robot, and we kept getting pictures of the KiwiBot like jaywalking essentially. And what we found out was that there wasn't enough time in the walking signal for the KiwiBot to cross the road. So it would start when the signal turned to walk, but the signal would stop. And so what that information kind of gave the city the intel that like if a KiwiBot can't cross in that amount of time, an elderly person or someone in a wheelchair probably also can't. And so sometimes from these pilots, you're learning really interesting things that like maybe you didn't necessarily go out and seek to learn, but you see all of the implications as well.
Right, and that elderly person or someone in a wheelchair needs that crossing more because they're less likely to be able to drive a vehicle as a substitute option. So yeah, great question, and one enormous subject that we could spend a whole lot of time on itself. We've got time for maybe one more somewhere from the audience. I thought I saw there's a hand in the back.
I just wanted to piggyback off. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, was there a comment from the audience here? Oh, and dogs. Oh, heck yes.
Amen.
Yes, dog safety. Although I find that I cross faster with the dog because the dog is dragging me. Yeah. Oh, oh, that's a whole other situation. Yeah, but good point.
So they were talking earlier at one of the panels about it doesn't really happen unless you spend the money towards it. And going back off to the questions, if we're really going to mobility, but a lot of the investments going towards motors and electrification of cars, where are we spending that? Where's the budget available to actually help with human mobility, like walking, biking, using your 2 feet, helping with physical disabilities and whatnot?
Yeah, no, that's right on the money in terms of expanding the definition of mobility and not just having that mean car to car. So the focus is definitely increasing. I'm seeing much more of a holistic approach to transportation. And by the way, autonomous vehicles help in this regard because, for example, improved pedestrian detection, but also they can drop you off and leave you or stay stationary somewhere farther away and come get you, and that eliminates the number of cars that circle a downtown simply looking for a parking spot. There are downtowns where a quarter of the traffic does not even want to be there. They're just circling looking for a spot. So that by itself, it's a little enabler that will help make this safer for everyone. And I don't know if any of our panelists want to add something to that.
I was just going to say, I think also the collection of outdoor spaces that is now being built in Detroit will kind of help enable that. So we have the park on the riverfront that's being built. There's now the Southwest Greenway that connects it to up here where there will be another park. And then there's Roosevelt Park that was just redone by the city. There's the Joe Louis Greenway going around. And so I think like all of these enabling pieces will make more people want to start to walk and bike and see how many places they can connect to by doing that. And then that will kind of enable more innovation in those spaces as well.